Let's talk about these aliens. And we're not going to talk about the creators that came and created a workforce which wound up being a force of highly intelligent beings that would subdue the earth. We're going to talk about the aliens that we see in UFO footage. These aliens are actual travelers from the these aliens are citizens from the community of the creators. And some of these aliens work directly with the creators. Some of these aliens are working in opposition to the creators. And we're going to talk about the space race here in a moment. But the aliens are coming, and if you're old enough, you'll remember that between the 1950s and the early mid 1990s, there were a lot of alien abductions being reported. A lot of people were talking about how they were abducted, and when they were abducted, they were tested, and their sexual extremities were manipulated, and they were injected, and they were brought back, and they would wake up and all of these different things. They would wake up knowing that something had happened but not knowing what, or they would know exactly what happened. Well, the alien abductions have been going on for a long time, and these are not simply alien abductions, they are upgrades. So when we talked about the creation of the white race, we talked about how they were created utilizing earthly DNA and otherworldly DNA, but that they were limited to a certain amount of time, and that after that time, nobody really truly knew what would happen. However, their creators their creation created a conflict amongst the otherworldly beings, and in doing so, the otherworldly beings left the earth, but they didn't leave the earth without leaving some form of contact, because the creators of white people honestly felt obligated to its creation, and it did not want its creation to fall to the wayside or die. And so it understood, the white people's creator understood that it would need upgrades in order to truly inhabit this earth. And so if you look through a lot of the ancient scrolls that come out of Europe, you'll see that there were alien contact. And you're going to see that in Egypt, and you're going to see that wherever the white population touched in number. Like if there was a large amount of white people in a certain area, you will always notice that there was some alien hieroglyphics or writings showing that there was a contact between these people and another worldly being. Well, those alien abductions that we know about were upgrades to the white race. to make sure that certain diseases didn't overtake them, to make sure that they were able to assimilate a lot better, to improve and speed up the assimilation. You got to remember the technologies of the otherworldly beings are being improved upon just as ours are. And if you notice that once that contact became consistent and constant, the technologies of the earth began to improve exponentially. And so you look from the 1950s, we could say the 1930s, and whenever the conversation began of UFOs, we could begin to speak from there. But we're gonna stick with the 50 to 1990 point. Then that's where we see the growth of technology, and that's also where we see the change in the development of the white race in regards to structure, in regards to the ability to deal with the UV rays, and in regards to the ability to assimilate within the cultures of the earth in a more fine-tuned manner, to where it's less awkward, less noticeable. It also was to upgrade their life expectancy, but also the experience that they have in their skin. We hear these sayings where if it's black, it don't crack, right? Like, you notice that there's a difference in the complexion of the white race, but you also notice that there's a difference in the way that the white race ages. And this isn't because of some evil entity. This is just because the DNA structure of their earthly parents and the DNA structure of their otherworldly parents, there was a conflict there. They made it work, but there still was a conflict, as we can tell by the complexion of the skin, as we could tell by the thinness of the skin, and as we could tell by the way the skin ages over time. Well, the alien abductions were to make sure that there was something injected into the genetic pool of the white race that would allow them to build up in a more natural manner when it comes to aging, in a more natural manner when it comes to the development of their bodies and their ability to merge with the people of the earth in a more fine-tuned manner. Just basic upgrades is what they were. But you'll notice that there's always the conversation about the grays and these and the tall whites and this. These are just uniforms being worn by those who come to visit, to upgrade, and those who are coming to destroy. Let's get to those guys. So when the creators of the white race did their when they committed the crime of creating outside of universal law, without the consent of the universal delegates or lawmakers or whatever you want to call them, they created a split amongst themselves. People that split from them did not approve of the creation and wanted to destroy the creation immediately. But there was a truce, and that truce was that the creation could stay where it's at for the time being. There was other things to handle, but at a point in time, the creation had to be removed. Well, the ones who are against it realized that the ones who were for it were not planning on removing until they had perfected whatever they needed to perfect with inside of this creation. And then they would make it to where this creation would have the ability to remove itself prior to its enemies coming to remove it. And so when that news hit the party of the otherworldly beings who did not want the earth other worldly being creation to exist anyway, it began to send its own delegates to the earth in order to try to undermine the development of this being on earth. And in doing so, it set off an alarm for the creators of this being. And the creators of this being began to increase the knowledge and the intelligence of the white race so that it could create a system for itself that would allow it to be notified when otherworldly beings began to enter into this realm, into our space. And so that technology was finally mastered in the 80s. And the earth was able to be netted or guarded by space weapons. We call them satellites and space stations and all of these things. Why are they there? Well, they're there to prevent the hostile aliens from coming to correct a wrong that was made eons ago. This is why even through the 80s, after the space net had been placed, there were still alien abductions. Some can come, but the ones that are supposed to come and change things back to normal, those are the ones that will be fought off with atomic weapons and whatever technology we have that can keep them away. So when we talk about the aliens, now you have to talk about Nibiru. What is Nibiru? Where, why, and all that? Well, we won't get into most of it, but we will say this. If Nibiru is hostile towards the white race, then it will not enter this area. It will not make it into our space. If Nibiru is not hostile and it's a friendly, then it will make it into our space. And the changes that come along with it will be what it will be. And that's all I can say about that. You can read about Nibiru and what it is and what it's going to do, but all you're going to be doing is feeding your mind more elements to create more questions, when all you need to know is that either it's one of two things. It's friendly towards the rulers of the earth, or it's a hostile towards the rulers of the earth. We have to remember that what has become of earth has changed a lot of things within the universe. So for instance, when the races began to mix, it created something that was totally unexpected, because you got to remember that the creators of the white race were supposed to come back and remove the white race from this earth at some point in time. But since the white race has been so prolific in interbreeding, when the creators come back, who do they leave and who do they take? So whereas the majority of the world would have been safe from this removal at one point, now the majority of the world is no longer safe from this removal, and whatever that removal means. Does it mean we're going to our own planet and we're going to be in another universe where we could just really be who we are? I don't know, because I don't really know. But the fact of the matter is, the DNA of the earth has changed, and there's very few inhabitants of earth that do not have otherworldly DNA within inside of them. The Bible states that in the end, there would be like 144,000 left. The pure the ones who have not intermingled with other worldly beings and their DNA, or the ones who have maintained the purity of their otherworldly DNA. It's either or. But if we assume that the Bible was written for, the Torah was written for white people, and the Bible was written for white people and not people of color, but white people, we'll assume that 144,000 is the pure. But with that being said, and when I say the pure, I mean the ones who have maintained that other worldly bloodline as tight as it possibly could be, according to its creation. But either way it goes, if there's a return of a hostile or a return of a friendly, the earth has become so mingled with otherworldly DNA. How do you know if you're free from what judgment comes, or what lies ahead for the race that was created by otherworldly beings utilizing the DNA of earthly beings? How do we know that we're not to be removed from the earth too, because we carry that DNA as well? These are questions that may arise, and they're good questions, but they don't have to be answered. And here's why. Well, you know what? We won't get to that. I'm going to lay out all of this basic shit so that you can have a higher understanding, so we can move forward. Because what you're going to realize is that all of this is playing out, and it means nothing until we understand who we are in the universe. It means nothing. You're just running your wheels in place. So let's talk about the black race.